The movie begins with someone secretly photographing the Pine Hotel. The scene then shifts to Mrs. Spring, who is cleaning a section of the hotel. Suddenly, she senses someone has entered the room. She pauses, turning off the vacuum cleaner momentarily to check, but sees no one. When she tries to start the vacuum cleaner again, it won't turn on. It turns out the cord is damaged. An electrician passing by mentions it looks like a rat chewed through the wire. Mrs. Spring thanks him, and he leaves. Suddenly, a man dressed in black appears from behind her with a terrifying expression, scaring Mrs. Spring. She backs up in an attempt to escape, only to fall onto a glass table and injure herself while the man stands ominously in front of her. The scene then shifts to Roy, who is watching old videotapes of his children, now grown and often too busy for him. Suddenly, the tape gets stuck, so he goes to Kevin's room to ask for help. Kevin, who is live streaming a game, is reluctant to stop, but after Roy insists, Kevin angrily pauses the stream to help. Just then, the doorbell rings. Roy's elder daughter arrives with the police. They warn her that if she's caught stealing alcohol again, she'll end up in jail. Roy, angry that she's only 16 and already getting into trouble, lectures her. Annoyed, Tyler storms off to her room without listening to her parents. Roy and Elaine discuss their concerns about keeping their kids away from bad influences and decide to take a weekend trip away from home. Elaine excitedly books a room at the Pine Hotel, where, at that moment, Mrs. Spring is tied to a chair, pleading for freedom as a masked man approaches with a drill and kills her. The next day, Roy and his family arrive at the hotel, where a young couple is booking their room as well. After they leave, Roy manually pays for his room since Mr. Lockwood, the receptionist, mentions there's no internet or electronic payment system. Meanwhile, Tyler, bored with the trip idea, spots two French guys drinking at the bar and strikes up a conversation. She tells them she planned to attend her favorite concert that weekend, but her parents brought her here instead. One of the boys mentions they have only 2 tickets for the concert and gives her his room number. Tyler promises to stop by during her stay. Just then, her mother, Elaine, enters the bar searching for her. The bartender, finding Elaine attractive, serves her drinks and tells her she can visit him anytime. Elaine tries to cheer Tyler up and help her feel included in the family trip, but her efforts have little effect. Elsewhere, a hotel employee finishes her shift and heads to her car, only to see a man tying a noose to a tree, pointing at her and threatening to hang her. Terrified, she tries to grab her car keys, only to realize they've been stolen. The mysterious man appears from behind and strikes her. As she falls, he attacks and kills her. Mr. Lockwood rolls the dice, and when a hotel employee asks about Mrs. Spring, Lockwood instructs him to check the basement. Meanwhile, Roy walks through the corridors and notices an electrician repairing a security camera, only to see a drunk man strike the electrician, causing him to fall. Simultaneously, the hotel worker heads to the basement in search of Mrs. Spring, where Lockwood strikes him from behind, leaving him unconscious. Roy and Elaine check into their hotel room while Tyler, annoyed, has to share a room with her brother, Kevin. Her parents present her with 2 zoo tickets, hoping to revive fond memories from their childhood visits, but it's clear Tyler isn't enjoying herself. Meanwhile, Lockwood orders another hotel worker to dispose of the man who was asking about Mrs. Spring. The worker reluctantly accepts payment but insists on staying out of further trouble. As he leaves, Lockwood locks the hotel's exterior doors, presses a few buttons, and announces that the show has started. The bartender, occupied with fixing a game machine, suddenly realizes a masked man is standing behind him. When the bartender mentions that the bar is closed, the man refuses to leave. Once the bartender finishes his game, he turns around, only to be brutally attacked. The masked man pops one of his eyes out by smashing his head against the game machine, ultimately torturing him to death. Late at night, Tyler smiles at pictures she took with the French guy in the bar and sneaks over to his room. He welcomes her, but his friend isn't pleased. Tyler leads him upstairs via a secret staircase Mrs. Spring once showed her during her past visits to the hotel. Meanwhile, her parents wake up and become alarmed upon noticing her absence. Another masked man sneaks into the newlywed couple's room, killing the groom in the bathtub, while the bride manages to escape, only to be killed in the corridor. Tyler gazes at the stars from the rooftop, smoking, as her father, Roy, searches the hotel for her. He heads to the reception but finds no sign of Lockwood, and the doors are locked. Unseen by them, a masked figure observes them through a security camera, passing close behind. The figure confirms that Elaine is alone in her room and knocks on her door. When she peers through the peephole and sees a stranger, she chooses not to open it. Later, she is startled as the door mysteriously opens despite being locked. Meanwhile, Roy continues asking around for Tyler, but no one has seen her. Eventually, an older man named David mentions that he spotted the French boys and suggests checking room 209. As Elaine waits for Roy, she begins reading a book. An intruder suddenly appears and attempts to strangle her with a rope. She fights back, throwing various objects at him, but gets cornered. In the end, he kills her by slitting her throat, with the entire murder live-streamed online as Lockwood ensures the world witnesses the horrific scene. The footage shows that Elaine has been killed. Meanwhile, Tyler wants to leave her parents in the hotel to attend the concert, so the boy suggests using his friend's tickets to escape immediately. Realizing the front door could be risky since her parents might intercept her, they decide to climb down a pipe to the ground floor. As her father knocks on the French boy's room, no one answers, so he and Elaine decide to check their own room, hoping Tyler has returned. At the same time, Lockwood removes the tape from the mouth of a hotel worker, who begs to be spared, promising to help Lockwood with his plans. However, Lockwood tapes his mouth shut again, stating he doesn't need help, and then covers himself with a plastic bag to avoid blood splatter before stabbing the worker in the face. Meanwhile, Lockwood fails to notice CCTV footage revealing Tyler and the boy escaping the hotel through a different route. When Roy enters his room, he is horrified to find blood on the door handle and Elaine's blood-covered body on the floor. Devastated, he tells Kevin to stay out of the room to spare him from seeing his mother's corpse. As David, a hotel guest, walks by and notices the scene, he mentions he had sensed something suspicious about the hotel. Revealing his identity as a former LAPD officer, he offers to help Roy find Tyler. They leave Kevin in David's room with strict instructions to lock the door and not open it under any circumstances. Kevin, left alone, starts playing video games, while Tyler begins to regret sneaking out without informing her parents. Meanwhile, David arms himself and heads toward the pool area, where the drunk man appears with his wife scolding him. At this point, Lockwood announces to the hotel guests that they are in a live-stream game show, and whoever survives will receive a large cash prize. Just then, the lights go out. When they come back on, the guests are shocked to see the drunk man's corpse hanging from a hook, soaked in blood. Suddenly, masked men appear and start slaughtering innocent guests. Despite Roy's pleas, David refrains from using his gun to fight back. They watch as people are killed and then take cover nearby. Meanwhile, Lockwood's computer detects a security breach coming from one of the hotel rooms. Kevin, a tech whiz, has managed to access the network and open a folder containing live footage of the masked men murdering hotel guests. Realizing the breach originated from Roy's room, Lockwood initiates a live video call with Kevin, threatening him for meddling and taunting him to consider his mother's fate. Simultaneously, two girls and a boy leave their room, alarmed by the flickering lights, and see two strangers at the end of the corridor. Thinking it's a prank, they realize the danger too late when one of the masked men stabs the boy with a double-edged knife. As they restrain the boy, one of the girls manages to escape and runs into Kevin, who is desperately searching for Tyler. One of the masked men chases them, and the girl drags Kevin upstairs, frantically knocking on doors for help as the unsettling flickering lights heighten the tension, yet no one opens their doors. The masked players play a gruesome game of tic-tac-toe on a hotel guest's body until he becomes faint. Meanwhile, Kevin and a girl are trapped in an elevator as a masked man approaches. When the elevator doors open, a masked woman captures the girl, leaving Kevin outside. She hugs the girl while Lockwood watches the action with pleasure from his room. Roy and David emerge from their hiding spot just as the girl steps out of the elevator, followed closely by the masked woman. The masked woman overpowers the girl on a trolley, but the girl grabs a fork and stabs the woman in the neck, killing her. The girl tries to escape through a window, but as she appears on the other side, a masked man stabs her in the face. Roy grows frustrated when he discovers Kevin is not in their room. At that moment, a muscular masked man enters and attacks him. David saves Roy by striking the masked man with a heavy object. Though the masked man throws David aside, David manages to fire a shot, killing the attacker just as he is about to crush Roy with a piece of furniture. Meanwhile, Kevin hides in the kitchen, staying on high alert. Suddenly, an alarm signals that an intruder has entered the building, momentarily pausing the game. Tyler insists that the boy return to the hotel, sensing that something strange is happening as the lights flicker and the hotel seems empty. Suddenly, a masked player with a spear appears and kills both Tyler and the boy by piercing their stomachs. As Roy rounds a corner in the hotel, he is attacked by another masked player. He begs David to shoot, but David, realizing it's part of a twisted game with a large cash prize, decides to walk away, leaving Roy to fend for himself. David then enters Lockwood's room and, seeing the prize money of $1 million displayed, becomes excited. He watches the fight between Roy and the masked player on the monitor. Suddenly, Roy steps out of the camera's view, only to reappear in the corridor wearing the masked player's outfit after killing him. Meanwhile, Lockwood removes his white robe, revealing himself as the mastermind behind the game. Furious at David's interference, he stabs him in the stomach, as David had been secretly planning to participate in the game for years. Lockwood then notices that only one survivor remains, Kevin, and he shows this to David before killing him. He announces that only one guest is left. Two masked players, one of whom is Roy, rush to locate the final survivor and secure victory. At the same time, Tyler regains consciousness and pulls the spear from her stomach. Roy finds Kevin and tells him to play dead while he confronts the last masked player. Lockwood rewinds the footage and realizes Roy is lying, discovering that Kevin is still alive. Lockwood announces over the microphone for the masked player to kill Roy. However, Roy overpowers the masked player, and Kevin finishes him off by stabbing him with a knife. Afterwards, Roy presses the masked player's face onto a stove, and Kevin turns on the heat, setting the player's face on fire and killing him. Furious at this unexpected turn of events, Lockwood grabs a hammer and rushes to kill Roy himself. He finds Roy standing near the front door and swings the hammer, but Roy dodges the attack and knocks Lockwood unconscious with a series of punches. Relieved to have survived, Roy embraces Kevin, but suddenly, Tyler sees a masked figure behind her brother. Without realizing it, she pierces the spear into her father's back, accidentally killing him. Moments later, Lockwood regains consciousness and attacks Tyler. She quickly counters, killing him with an axe. The police arrive, rescuing Kevin and Tyler, while many viewers, including the rescue staff, watch the live-streamed finale of the Twisted Game. Kevin and Tyler are declared the game's winners. As the screen fades to black, the game designer announces that he will return with another thrilling game. The movie ends here.